How's it going, everyone? My name is Swanee, and for today's video, I have some Helldivers 2 tips and tricks that you probably didn't know about. Now, these tips are going to range from early beginner tips that may seem a little bit obvious to some more advanced tips, because here on the channel, I like to make tips and tricks videos for people of all ages and skill levels. So at any point, if you learn something new during this video, then please consider hitting the thumbs up button because it helps me out in the algorithm, and it's greatly appreciated. So with that said, let's jump right into it. So the very first tip is pretty simple, but don't forget to do your daily missions. This is going to pop up every day down in the bottom right hand corner, and it's going to show up on your Galactic War map. For example, my daily quest for today is kill 500 of the Termines, which is pretty easy to do. You can probably get this done in just one match. But you definitely don't want to miss out on doing these because the rewards are substantial. So the next tip is for those of you that like to play solo, and it's, don't do that. If you play solo, you are going to make it just way harder on yourself. You're going to level up just way slower. And I get that not everyone has friends to play with, but when I was playing by myself, I noticed it was taking just forever to level up and to get new upgrades. But then once I started to do quick match and I started to join other players, or I had other players join me, the amount of time it was taking to complete missions was cut basically in half, and the amount of XP that I was getting playing with random people was way higher than what I was getting when I was playing by myself. Now when you're playing with random players, you don't have to listen to them. You can turn off your microphone and you can mute the whole party so you don't have to hear them either. And then when you're playing with random players, you can split up and get multiple objectives completed at the same time, and then you can just straight up burn through the objectives and complete the missions in no time. But let's say you don't care about the XP grind and you just want to play solo. Well, if you are going to play solo, I highly recommend you get the Sentry Stratagems, because calling in Sentry Turrets to help take out the enemies is a huge help. When you're playing by yourself, you can easily get overwhelmed and just swarmed by how many creatures are just straight up in your face. So calling in these Sentry Turrets to help back you up is a huge help if you're a solo player. So the next tip is a pretty simple one, but if you're using any of the weapon stratagems, call them in at the very beginning of the match. So for example, if you're using the heavy machine gun or a rocket launcher, call it in right away. That way you can pick it up and use it, and then it's already on cooldown. These weapons are extremely useful and they're better than the base weapons. So if you call in a heavy machine gun at the beginning, that timer's already going to be ticking down, so you can call in another one and you can basically double dip. So don't wait until you're in the middle of a fight to call in your weapon stratagems. Call them in as soon as you begin the mission. Now this next tip may be a little bit obvious to some of you, but it's to make sure to explore. There's a lot of things that aren't going to be marked on your map, such as hidden weapons or different currencies. The grind can be pretty rough in this game to unlock different upgrades and stuff, so you're definitely going to want to explore and collect as much currency as possible. When I'm playing with random people online, I tend to let them do some of the main objectives, and then I'll go off and explore and collect currencies and stuff. And the cool thing is that when you're playing with random players, everybody kind of shares this currency. So if your teammates pick up currency, you're going to get that currency. If your teammates complete some sort of an objective and get some XP, you're going to also get that XP. So don't just try to speed run every single mission. You're definitely going to want to explore so that you can start building up your currency to unlock some of those upgrades. So this next tip isn't one that's really covered in the tutorial, but it's that you can ping things using your mini-map for your whole team to see. So if you're using a controller, just bring up the mini-map and then you use the D-pad, and if you're on PC, then you just right-click and drag the mouse, and then you click anywhere on the minimap and it will ping for you and your teammates to see. And then once it's pinged, it will show up at the top of your screen on your compass. So if you're trying to communicate with your teammates that, hey, we need to go check out this objective, or we need to go over here and do this side objective, then this is an easy way to do it. You can also ping individual items or creatures using the right bumper or R1 or the Q key, and this is really handy if you see some like enemy patrols off in the distance that you want to avoid, or if there's a heavy weapon on the ground you want your teammates to pick up, or if you're trying to ping some sort of side objective. And then if you hold in the ping button, this will bring up the communication wheel where you can tell your teammates yes or no, or go here, or you can give them like a smiley face or a frowny face. And this just gives you a couple more options to communicate really quickly with your teammates without having to use your microphone or physically type in the chat. So next up, did you know that your weapon has a flashlight? Well, if you hold in the reload button, this is going to give you the option to cycle through different flashlight options on your weapon. You can either make it automatic, or you can have it always on or always off. This is really helpful for some of those maps where it's really dark out and it's kind of hard to see things. Holding in the reload button also shows you how many bullets are left in your magazine, magazine. Now the HUD doesn't normally show you, it just shows you this little picture of your magazine getting lower and lower until you're out of bullets, and then you have to manually reload. So if you want to manually see just how many bullets you have left, just simply hold in the reload button. And while you're holding in the reload button, you can also swap out the scopes for some of the different weapons. So if you have any type of rifle that has multiple scopes, you can switch between them in this menu. And if you didn't know how to use your scopes, if you click in the middle mouse button, or if you click in the right stick on controller, this is going to switch you to first person when you're in combat. And this works for pretty much any weapon in the game. You can constantly just swap in and out between first and third person. And if you want, there's even an option in the settings so that every time you go to zoom in, it automatically puts you in first person mode. And another cool thing about holding in the reload button is that this lets you change out the rate of fire of your weapon. This is extremely useful because in this game, you can very quickly burn through your ammo. And being able to switch from full auto to maybe burst fire or single shot is going to end up saving you a ton of ammo, and it's going to make your shots a lot more accurate. And another cool feature is that you can do this with some of the heavy weapons as well, like the light machine gun or the stalwart machine gun. And with these weapons, it lets you change the rate of fire to make it a faster RPM. So you can go from 700 RPM all the way up to 1150 RPM. This will drastically increase your rate of fire and will just straight up melt through any enemies that are up close. But do be careful because this is going to drastically increase your recoil and it's going to make it insanely inaccurate. So I only recommend doing this if you're going to be up close and personal to enemies. So for the next tip, if you didn't know, you can hold down the X key on PC, or you can hold down on the D-pad using a controller, and this will bring up a wheel where you can drop certain items that you're carrying. So if you're carrying a rocket launcher, or a jump pack, or a heavy machine gun, and you want to drop them for your teammates, you can just bring up this wheel, drop the items, and then ping them, and then boom, you can share different weapons and stuff with your friends. So for the next tip, I'm sure you guys have seen these annoying drop ships that come in and they drop off a ton of the robot enemies, and you know, it can go from 0 to 100 real quickly with how fast these ships can come in. Well, if you didn't know, you can actually shoot these ships down out of the sky using the rocket launcher, which will just instantly kill all of the robots that it was carrying. So anytime you see these drop ships, make sure that you have some sort of rocket launcher or something on you that can take these out, because you definitely don't want them to drop off their reinforcements. So the next tip is for when you're playing with other people. If you have extra stems on you and you see that your teammate is hurt, you can heal them using your stems. So be a good teammate and stay close together and play the medic role and heal your teammates whenever they're hurt. And then the next tip is probably one of the most useful tips on this list, and it's to take advantage of when you die. Now when you die and you respawn, either your teammates call you in or you're playing solo and it just auto respawns you, you have a couple seconds when you're respawning that you can control the flight pattern of your drop pod. Now you can either try to land your drop pod on some enemies, and this is going to do a massive amount of damage, so I like to target mini bosses and stuff like this. Or what I found is even more useful is to try to land your drop pod on some sort of high ground. Now this can be some sort of hill or like a little mini cliff. Just try to land on some sort of high ground because the enemies aren't going to be able to reach you. And then while you're sitting on the high ground, you can just take your time and pick off all the enemies one by one. This is super useful for some of those horde type missions where you just have to defeat waves and waves of different enemies. So definitely take advantage of your drop pod and make sure you get to the high ground. It worked for Obi-Wan Kenobi, and it's going to work for you. And then the final tip that I have for you all is to call in your stratagems while you're on the run. Now, I don't know if it's just a bug going on right now, but when you're in the menu to call in your reinforcements and you have to activate the code with the different arrows, for me at least, it doesn't let my character walk forward. So I've seen a lot of people try to activate reinforcements like when I'm dead or I'm just watching my teammates and they're standing completely still, and you don't have to do that. Like, it's much safer to try to activate these on the run. Now, it doesn't let you move forward, but you can run side to side and backwards. So when things are rough and there's enemies all around and I have to call in a dead teammate for reinforcements, or if I'm trying to call in an airstrike, just turn the camera around behind you and run backwards, like towards the screen. And then you can call in whatever reinforcements or stratagems on the run, and it's a lot safer this way instead of standing completely still and getting killed. So that is going to do it for all the tips and tricks in today's video. If you guys enjoyed it, then please consider giving me a thumbs up. It's greatly appreciated and it helps me out in the algorithm. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications. That way you guys don't miss out on any future content. And that is going to do it for me, guys, and I will talk to you all in the next video.